Okay, the broadcast has been started and we are streaming. We should be.
Okay, can I be seen?
Be live on that link. Let me check the websites, make sure that we are live. Yes. Okay. Hopefully a bunch of guys join us here. This is the first episode of the Double Down Show Season 3, and we're just privileged to have Counsel Ivan Ojakol. I'll let Counsel Ivan Ojakol make an introduction of himself. What I can say is an ardent basketball follower and a sports fan all together. But I'll let him introduce himself, and then we'll dive into everything sport, everything laws, and sport. Counsel Ivan Ojakol, you're welcome to the Double Down Show.
Thank you very much, Chuchu. I'm really honored to be perhaps the active basketball stakeholder. Maybe I could be a stakeholder because I'm an ardent fan, like you said, but I'm honored to be perhaps the first legal person on the show, on this Double Down Show, which I believe is a leading podcast as far as basketball is concerned in this country. Just a brief introduction. I'm a lawyer. I'm a practicing lawyer, and I'm also a lecturer in law. But importantly, I describe myself as a budding sports lawyer. It's an area I've taken interest in the last 3 years, developed expertise, and I'm increasingly developing expertise. I've not yet represented anyone in basketball, but I've done so as far as football is concerned. I've represented a couple of amateur golfers, both regulatory and as far as dispute resolution is concerned. So I'm really honored, and I'm privileged and honored and happy today to share my few nuggets here and there as far as sports is concerned and basketball is concerned. And by the way, there is such a thing as basketball also now. So I'm really happy that I'm being given this opportunity to share my knowledge in the area.
If we could just dive straight into it, how do you see the landscape in regards to sports and maybe basketball and law and the laws that really govern the business of basketball? Let's start from there, Counsel.
How I see the landscape, there is a developing sports law in Uganda slowly. There is a developing basketball law slowly, though it's taking forever to develop to the levels that we want. But importantly, just for background, what is sports law? Sports law sometimes referred to by sports scholars as the lex sportiva. Lex is basically maybe the Latin translation of law, and sport is sportiva, is Latin translation of sport. Has developed over the last 20 or so years, especially thanks to a body called the Court of Arbitration for Sport that has laid down jurisprudence. Jurisprudence is a body of cases that has helped develop the area. Even in the Western world, where it seems like the area is developing or is more developed than the rest of us, they are still down. There's nothing like sports law. Being a lawyer, and I know many of our listeners and viewers and people following the stream and the podcast may not know that these things, but maybe for a lawyer, I'll try and break it down as much as possible for a layman. People argue and do not believe that there's something called sports law because they believe it's an amalgamation of many things, of many areas of the law, from labor law, for example, employment. Someone's going to be employed by a basketball club. For example, if it's intellectual property is a different area of the law. And as far as basketball is concerned, as far as sports is concerned, you'll see that athletes, for example, Lionel Messi, LeBron James, etc., have trademarked a number of logos, a number of things about them. Messi even trademarked his name. If it's contract, the law of contract. The Contracts Act is a whole different legal regime international as far as contract is concerned. And then people are signing contract, and many of the disputes in sports and basketball arise from that fine letter, the fine print in the contract. I was supposed to be paid this money, I was not paid. I was supposed to be given a bonus, I was not given a bonus. I was terminated arbitrarily. I was not given a fair hearing by whoever terminated me, as you know, things like those. So sports law is a body of law that has arisen and claims autonomy from the rest of the world laws. For example, sports law can claim autonomy from the Constitution of Uganda. For example, FIFA, the Federation of International Football Association, is a governing body of football in the world. FIBA is a governing body of basketball in the world. There's a term that is used in football in FIFA called organized football. Unfortunately, FIBA does not adopt the same term, but FIFA says anything organized football is under its ambit, meaning from primary school competitions through high school. Same thing with basketball. So, where is FIFA and where is FIBA located? Tushu, do you know the headquarters of FIBA?
Switzerland.
Yes. And guess what? They're incorporated under the laws of Switzerland. So is Switzerland and Uganda the same country? Let me ask you that question, Tushu. But Hawaii is the body that governs sport all over the world, incorporated in Switzerland. So the sports law basically is now FIFA and FIBA saying we have created our own laws, and whichever member federation, whichever member body that is registered under us has to follow those laws. So they create a different legal system, different laws that must be followed by whoever subscribes to them. If you don't do that, then you're not under them. You cannot play in the World Cup. For example, you've seen Kenya after falling out. Well, the CEO of the Federation of Kenya Football Association had issues with government, especially after Kenya failed to qualify for the African Cup of Nations. So they went after him and dug him up and realized there's a lot of dirt that he had been doing. So they decided to put him on the side and even prosecute him under the law. But guess what? FIFA that recognizes him and that he subscribes to, and perhaps that recognizes him as the president of the FKF, decided that no, Kenya, you've been banned for participating in our organized football, meaning African Cup of Nations, meaning World Cup, etc. So that is how powerful they are. That even where the law, where a country says that we have our own laws that govern us, these guys come and say no. If, for example, you've heard of people always come after FIFA here in Uganda and say Magogo is corrupt, etc., etc. But Magogo always say that guess what? First, we are accounted to our body, our superiors, the guys who rule us, and that is who? FIFA, not you, the Uganda government. So we have no obligations whatsoever. Actually, when it comes to football, there's even a proper definition of who a stakeholder is. A stakeholder is not you and I, no. Stakeholder is a person, for example, a coach, a footballer, and not even any journalist can claim they're stakeholders, no. So meaning that even the ownership of a sport is owned by a body. So it gets quite interesting. So that is where sports law develops from. Basically, a body of laws that these sports federations and sports bodies have come up with to govern their sport independently and autonomously from government, from states, from political interference, etc. and etc. And thankfully, they have international dispute resolution mechanisms through the Court of Arbitration for Sport when it comes to basketball, through FIBA and something called the Basketball Arbitration Tribunal. When it comes to football, is the FIFA Dispute Resolution Chamber, Player Status Committee, etc., that have developed their own cases. For example, the same sports law even has its own definition of what sporting nationality is. You heard of a dispute that arose recently when Chine Gumuike, I wrote that article for Basketball 256. I request all of you to go and look it up on the website, which will direct you there. Chine, Neka Gumuike, and their sister Erika, and the one Brenda, she called Brenda Williams, wanted to play for Nigeria in the run-up to the Olympics. And guess what? FIBA said, no, you're not eligible to play. You, under our FIBA statutes, our general statutes and regulations, did not get your first passport at 16 years, despite the fact that your parents are Nigerian. We don't want to know. A normal Ugandan law, a normal national law will say that you're a citizen of this country by birth, by descent, etc. Those guys don't want to know. You must have acquired your first passport by 16 years. The same issue as a reason in Uganda, we have failed to get Brandon Sebedu will be playing for us. We failed to get the shooter, what's his name? John Baligwewere. What's his name? Jordan Clark. Is he called John? What's his name? The guy who plays for Utah Jazz, the sixth man, has failed to play for Philippines because of issues like that. The same reason why perhaps, and also under the same sporting nationality, we cannot have two naturalized players playing for us. We cannot have Brandon Davis playing for us, and we cannot have Ishmael Wainwright. And just imagine the combination of Ishmael Wainwright and Brandon Davis playing for the Silverbacks would all most definitely put up a fight against the likes of Senegal. So it is a very interesting area. Naysayers say, no, it doesn't exist. It's just an amalgamation of all kinds of laws. But these guys are saying, guess what? We have established our own systems, our own laws, and we can purport, we can say we exist independently. But guess what? Over the years, especially in countries like ours, where the sports bodies are not very well funded, where professionalization of sport is still at an asset level, they still rely on government. Some government you're saying you're independent from, but you're begging money. So Silverbacks begging money. I think Muhozi came through for them. So when Muhozi is saying, but guess what? Account to me for my money. This is government money. You account for me. So when you say account for my money. So it gets very interesting. You're saying you're independent, but still you come into government. You've seen how FUFA gets a lot of money to government. So it's a hybrid approach that is developing, despite the fact that these guys claim to be independent. And of course, the administrators of sport always come out and say that they're independent whenever they have issues. So it's a very, very interesting area. So in a nutshell, I don't know if I've tried to explain it to you, but that is it.
You have. And indeed, there's that whole notion that it's an amalgamation of laws. Yeah. And in due honesty, you look at sports law. Under the sports law, you can see there's contract law. You know, there's labor law. There's a bunch of laws, you know, because this is also kind of like a job. But I want us to kind of break it down to that level, like the kind of individual laws that can be accommodated in sports law, and we really give it a Ugandan context. We start with contract law, really. A lot of, and I'm hoping this conversation here goes a long way to help to change the landscape, especially for players and coaches and stakeholders in Ugandan sport. A lot of guys get on the pitches, on the floors, without real contracts or without the contracts being honored and things of the sort. What do you say about that, and what could be a remedy in terms of seeing that, you know, having these people working within the right confines is really something that is a norm, it becomes a standard?
Everything starts with the administrators of a sport. Everything starts with the administration of a sport. Thankfully, I've seen the football statutes. I think they're called football statutes and regulations. They attempt to make it mandatory for every club to ensure that it has a contract for its players. But of course, the enforcement of that is also an issue. I mean, for example, what kind of contracts are being given to players? Just a one-pager, just a few things. You're receiving some amount of money. And as a player, from experience as a legal practitioner, in the entertainment world, the sports world, what people in those sectors are interested in, what a musician is interested in, what a sportsman is interested in, is just that clause of fees. How much am I earning per month? Other clauses of a contract, you'll not bother. Many times, you'll not even involve a legal practitioner, a person specialized in that area to help them as far as the contract is concerned. Well, the arguments about legal lawyers are expensive and what have you, but well, that is what is more expensive. You, at the end of the day, being cheated of your area, of your salary areas, bonuses, and what have you, and being not given your best, or you just getting a lawyer and paying him a few $1,000 to help you draft that contract. But again, the lawyers like me who have offered, I'm doing for some time, because you know it's important that we build the sector. But that's another discussion. So, governance of a sport is important. Football, indeed, is showing the will, is showing the intention to ensure that we move towards the professionalization by saying that, guess what? We need every club to ensure, before we license you, that your players have contracts. But of course, the enforceability of that is a whole different ballgame. But also importantly, if you look at the NBA, for example, they even have a standard template that every club must pay attention to. They have a standard template. I think the first 28 pages are even mandatory, and every contract must have them. must provide for, I think, there's a CBA there, collective bargaining agreement, that allows, I think you've had Chris Paul, I think right now it's, what's his name, the guy of Pelicans Basketball Players Association.
Smith. Yeah.
McCollum, CJ McCollum, yes, he's the current president. So, CJ is the current president. So that, of the association, yes. So that the contracts must incorporate that union of the players, so that it can help as far as employment issues is concerned. You've seen how, for example, Ben Simmons, people I've seen these commentators going after him. Of course, the morality of it sits out whole season, but now he's going after the 76ers and saying that he wants us $20 billion that are accrued in fines. It may look like hogwash, or it may look like a guy just being greedy, or some young man just being so entitled. But guess what? There is the law. The laws, as far as the NBA is concerned, and the practice as far as the NBA is concerned, you can actually get away with that case. And I'm sure they'd get one over the 76ers when they go to court. Because, for example, if you go to the uniform contract and the standard contract of NBA players, there are minimum things. That's why I see what's his name? Luol Deng, the Sudanese current president. Luol Deng, continued being paid. Yeah, absolutely. Even after 4 years after he left, I think he just finished this year. Because they are so watertight and so player-centric and player-protective. In other words, even when a guy is a poor performer, you still have to fulfill his contract and pay him off. Even on a trade, there are certain obligations they have to give the guy his money, even if you're trading him. Whether a guy has been injured and is recurrently injured, you find out you have to pay him. Ben Simmons is saying mental health. People are dismissing mental health. Mental health is a serious thing. It actually can happen. So you just let's wait for whatever will come out of the courts there, but it's possible. So the governance, but also more intention, FUBA as a regulator, as a governing body of the sport, must be more intentional as far as that is concerned. But importantly also, before you even blame FUBA, that thing of charity begins at home. How many clubs, even after all, people are very good at lip service and talking so much, oh, FUBA is not doing this, but how many club owners, a new tutor, you're playing basketball, a close follower, even Div 1, Div 2, since about 2008, 2007. So I know that there's a lot of, how many club owners do you know that actually offer contracts? How many do you know that actually fulfill their obligations? How many do you know that, don't just terminate contracts arbitrarily, and because they know they can get away with it and bully a player here and there? So there's that thing of also, as far as professionalizing, if you want to move to the professionalization of the sport, clubs themselves as stakeholders, as major stakeholders in the industry, must be willing to go the extra mile and ensure that they play their part. If a guy has signed a contract, pay him. If you're having issues, for example, COVID came, there are clauses that you can take advantage of, but of course you can renegotiate and enter into some sort of debt settlement agreement and find out paying the guy later. But these things are just dismissing a guy. No, of course there's something called force majeure in law, which lawyers know that can automatically lead to the cancellation of a contract. But even that, the exceptions. There must be you must have taken some other efforts to ensure that you try and redeem that if you couldn't, then maybe that contract can be frustrated. But so clubs need to put their houses in order, and that, for example, you've seen football is actually moving towards that slowly. Football, I've handled some disputes internally, and I can assure you, and FIFA seems to be biting. FIFA seems to be biting through its dispute resolution systems internally and going after clubs. Of course, some of those things because clubs don't want the bad rep or bad press out there. Some of them are not really publicized that much, but FIFA is trying to do that. Of course, even them, they have their issues. As far as I'm concerned, we cannot run away from the fact that we're Ugandans and we're in the kind of country that we live in. We don't have a sports act. We need a proper sports act, a modern, proper sports act. Kenya has a proper sports act, a modern sports act that has an efficient, quick dispute resolution mechanism through their sports dispute tribunal. That is doing a good job as far as this is concerned. Try to even, of course, haters, naysayers, and people who are trying to stop the progress of the sport have even tried to block the tribunal from doing its job. But the courts have increasingly said the tribunal has jurisdiction over sports matters. So, for example, when it comes to domestic sports matters, for example, if you've had an issue at FUBA, you appeal to the sports tribunal, or you can even handle a matter what in law we call original. You can have the original jurisdiction of a matter. Say, for example, a contractual dispute between a club and a player. If you're not sure, FUBA can give you through its internal dispute resolution mechanisms. It can give you equity and justice. You can go there and you get a proper solution with proper basketball minds, with proper sports minds there deciding those matters. So we need all of this up. As far as contracts are concerned, all of that will start from the legislative role of Parliament. Parliament must follow through. But Mr. Magogo is trying to push through this. Hopefully, comes through. Mr. Magogo and Ministry of Sport, but we have seen so many drafts that just never see the light of day and have been rotting on the shelves of Parliament. So, if it can come through with a proper act to govern the sport, modern act that lays out certain obligations for sports federations, and with a proper dispute resolution mechanism, and also just creating awareness to players that guess what, you can actually go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. FUBA, FUFA, for example, big members of FIFA and FIBA. FIBA and FIFA recognize CAS. And even when you look at the statutes of for example, FUFA, you'll see that there's recognition of the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is giving justice all over the world. Of course, it may be expensive, but I've seen them trying to bring officers to Africa now. I think they're in Morocco and I think Egypt or something like that. So you can actually get justice. And I've said pro bono lawyers like us who are trying to develop the sport, we're also there to help. So yeah, proper dispute resolution mechanisms will go a long way in helping us. There's something called the Basketball Arbitration Tribunal, which is recognized by FIBA. Well, for which it only has jurisdiction on contractual disputes. It does not have jurisdiction on, say, a matter involving FIBA. No. For example, if it's Power Basketball Club versus, this is just an example, Geoffrey Soro over a contractual dispute. Geoffrey Soro can take on Power, the Basketball Arbitration Tribunal. It does not have licensing, disciplinary issues, no. It only handles contractual disputes. And there are many of them in Europe, people take advantage again in justice. Quick, efficient mechanism. So that is what perhaps is missing in our sport, and hopefully we can have that. Yes.
Maybe before we skip over it, the hierarchy of sports administration in Uganda, of course, constitutionally, sport is a right, is every Ugandan right, disabled or not. Yeah, we should have the right to enjoy.
Absolutely.
Sport. But how do you see the hierarchy of sports being part of the Ministry of Education? Of course, you go into the National Council of Sports Act of 1964, which could be a cake. What do you have to say about issues at that level?
No, there's a problem undoubtedly, and well, guys, forgive me for saying this, but a certain birthday boy recently said that he's going to promote sports and entertainment. Hopefully, he comes to that. Guys, Chucha, I'm not trying to spoil your show. Yeah, undoubtedly, there's a need to separate the two. For example, there's a funny bill. I don't know. I hope, guys, I'm sorry to say this, but I hope the ministry has dropped that bill. I actually thank Magogo for coming up with his own act, his own bill, which sort of threatened the guys at the ministry that come up with something called the Sports Act and Physical Education. And I was like, why are you combining the two? How are the two related? Physical education and sports. Sports is, what's the thing? Perhaps, and I'm sorry to say this, perhaps, and okay, but the boy has said he has recognized it, but people at the helm of the country perhaps have failed to, and even after all the successes of Chetege and what have you, and rugby cranes and silverbacks, I felt perhaps to really realize how big sport is as a global phenomenon and how much can change people's lives. So there's why you should be mixing the two, honestly. And like you've said, sports, that's NCS Act, honestly, needs to be repealed. And I really hope before the end of this current term of His Excellency President Joram Museveni, these guys can come up with a proper modern sports act with modern things basically to help govern the sport. Because honestly, we need a different ministry to properly run sports away from all of us. Apparently, and I'm sorry to say this, I know lawyers are not supposed to speculate, but I know sometimes some infighting comes in sometimes at the ministry, for example, when it comes to what money should go to schools. And certain people are perhaps interested in keeping the two combined forever for their own interests. But I hope they can come to a realization, and slowly, I'm seeing slowly they're coming to a realization that there is need to honestly to govern the sports separately, to have a proper sports act with its own unique features like a sports dispute tribunal and important modern things, allow players to enjoy their image rights and etc.
We're
Of course,
going, we're
well,
going to
image rights
get
can
into
away
that.
from legislation.
I really have interest
Yes,
you talk about players and
yes,
their image and likeness in
yes,
its own self.
yes,
But there's also
yes,
something
yes,
that
yes,
you roughly talked about, and you talked about it in the context of the NBA when you talked about CJ McCollum being the president of the Players Association. As I understand, in Uganda, we have the Uganda Basketball Players
yes,
Association, which doesn't seem to have any bargaining rights, which doesn't seem to work in any kind of way as a union should.
yeah,
First of all, what should this
yes.
organization, the Uganda Basketball Players Association, of course, the other associations as well,
But
what should they do so
it
that
is mm, mm.
they actually,
It's good you brought up this discussion. It's a very controversial discussion. And as a scholar in the area, scholars sometimes we go into a lot of over analyzing of things away from if a practitioner, for example, is representing someone, you want to just get a solution very quickly. But if when I wear my scholarly hat, I want to analyze that. It's good you brought it up because I'm writing some paper somewhere. So you must understand these Americans are unique. It's something called American exceptionalism. You know that their NBA does not even, it's independent, doesn't subscribe to FIBA, for example, which is a so-called world governing body. It doesn't. So the Americans have their own way of being their own things in everything in society, in just about everything. So you can even see that. I mean, for we have 10 minutes, we have 12 minutes. We have 5 hours, we have 6 hours. So many things, just American exceptionally. So, like I mentioned again, let's go back to the origins of what sports law is. There's a body called FIBA, which governs the sport. In Uganda, collective bargaining agreements and labor unions are recognized under our Employment Act. But now, where is the convergence of the Ugandan law and FIBA? FIBA does not seem to recognize those things. And I'm not sure, I could be wrong, but I doubt it is the same in Europe. I doubt they have such player unions or powerful player unions like that. I'm not sure, I could be wrong. Or maybe if they do, they have just, but from the angle, it may be an amalgamation and a proper concession of the hybrid app that sports law cannot lie to us and it can exist independently. Then at some point, there'll be a confluence of national laws and sports law. So if that is the case, indeed, and indeed that National Basketball Players Association is there, I think it just needs to get active as simple as that. Of course, a friend of mine called Isma Daka Machigongo. He's a great friend of mine, and I really love his sports analysis and punditry. He told me that the basketball world is so intertwined and it is so small that we don't even have any serious disputes that have ever happened in the course of law. Am I wrong, Chicho? Have you ever heard of any?
No, none that has.
Well, for football, just about every day there's something. Absolutely. All of them are resolved at a bar at Chadondo. You just be stick out. Where are you now? Where do you guys hang now? I mean, you guys are either so forgiving, just so complacent, or I don't know, so docile. There are basically barely any disputes, as in serious disputes. And when FUBA says something, it is like the alpha and omega. Everyone just says yes.
Do you, in
We have
some
allowed.
sense,
We have
believe
accepted.
that
So,
to the greater extent, people have not appreciated
yes,
the business of basketball?
absolutely.
It's taken
Generally
as
sports, but yes, it's good
a
you're saying
fun
basketball.
thing. Like,
Yes, a fun thing. And basketballers here are still okay. Yes, generally our sport is amateur, but basketball seems to be more amateur than amateur because it seems. First of all, look at the basketball offices, man. Let's be serious, guys. No, I know. Again, that is because of the nature of. I mean, basketball doesn't receive that much funding, for example. I'm sorry to say this, but I mean, we are really, and honestly, for the publicity the sport gets. Remember those days of Falcons Power, early 2010s, the numbers that would show up at basketball? Why haven't we moved to properly latch onto the commercialization of the sport to the levels that we want? What is the hindrance? I mean, let me tell you, disputes, conflict develops industries. Football has developed because of what goes on. Have you ever heard of something called the Bossman rule? A guy called Bossman. Bossman is literally the one who opened up floodgates for transfers for people from one country to another in Europe. So a guy just wakes up and takes on. I'm not encouraging anyone, but anyway, and takes on football somewhere over something. You just never know how many